Good morning. My name is Chris Sains. I'm the director of the Queensland Art Gallery and Gallery of Modern Art, and it's a great pleasure to welcome you to this morning's keynote address. I want to begin by respectfully acknowledging the traditional owners of the land upon which we meet, the Yuggera and Turrbal peoples, and recognise them as the first visual and creative artists to actually settle here along the banks of the Kurilpa Point and the Maiwar River. In the spirit of reconciliation, as an Australian, I recognise the role that Indigenous elders have played and very generously continue to play in the formation of our shared creative community. I warmly welcome them, and I very warmly welcome all of you to this, I think, wonderful address that we can all look forward to. By way of a brief background about Patricia, there's been much talk about the work itself in recent days, but I thought I'd just focus a little on her biographical background to key in the context for some of what she'll be talking about this morning. Pardon me. Patricia was born in Sierra Leone in 1965 and grew up in Australia. The Melbourne-based artist represented Australia pardon me, at the 50th Venice Biennale in 2003 with We Are Family. In fact, one of the key works from that exhibition has appeared on the slides several times. It's an exhibition that also toured onto Tokyo and to Bendigo. Her major international solo museum surveys have recently included Consciencia, Sao Paulo in 2015, which toured to 3 other venues and was seen by an extraordinary 1.4 million people, making it the most visited contemporary art exhibition in the world in 2016. We're kind of thinking we'll move past that, but this is a benchmark of benchmarks. Her most recent major exhibitions in Australia were Once Upon a Time at the Art Gallery of South Australia in 2011, Relativity at the Art Gallery of Western Australia in 2010, and Evolution at the Tasmanian Museum and Art Gallery in 2009. In 2014, Patricia was awarded the Melbourne Art Foundation Visual Arts Award, and in 2016 she received a Doctor of Visual Arts and Performing Arts honoris causa from the Victorian College of the Arts. Patricia's has been one of the most sustained, insistent and remarkable careers of any artist working in Australia today. Curious Affection is undoubtedly her boldest move to date, comprising an extensive mid-career survey that could almost stand on its own, a newly deployed inflatable pneumotopia, which you'll see outside in the central space, a cinema program which will be running across the season of the exhibition, a shape-shifting children's arts centre project which is in Gallery 1.4 at the back of the exhibition, and a journey into a natural, unnatural world like none before, which really opens out in the Fairfax galleries. Patricia has expanded her world exponentially with 20 newly made works that take her practice in this exhibition into uncharted territory. Curious Affection addresses the rapidly accelerating interactions and overlaps between the human and non-human worlds, and it stands as a provocation about actual and approaching futures. Patricia's extraordinary creatures, once entirely self-contained or gathered in small family units, now populate large-scale environments and soundscapes that utterly shift the register in which we read them. As you will know if you've already ventured inside the exhibition, this is not an exhibition you will quickly forget. It's an exhibition, I think, that will require multiple visits indeed to really understand, to look and to think carefully about the propositions that Patricia makes through these works. I feel very fortunate that the gallery is presenting the exhibition, very grateful to Patricia and her husband Peter Hennessy, who's been a really key player in the design coordination of the show. And also I do need to acknowledge a very important player on our own team, Peter McKay, Curator of Australian Art, who's been responsible for working with Patricia in the development and realisation of this project. So with those words of introduction and welcome, will you please join me in very warmly welcoming Patricia Piccinini.
Thank you so much for being here today. It's really wonderful for me to be able to talk to you about my new work, which I'm really excited about. See if I can work this. Yes. So, the great thing about Curious Affection is I've been able to make a leap in my work that I've been trying to make for about a decade. I've been making works for pedestals since I left art school. But after Venice, I thought, I'd really like to make an environment for these works to inhabit. And it took coming to GOMA here to have that opportunity to do so. And so what I've tried to do is I've tried to make a whole world. And the world is a kind of journey for the viewer, and it starts when you walk in, and it doesn't end until you walk out the door. And this is how I imagined it. I imagined it as this great vista of the field, and then you would climb up to the Eyrie, and then you would descend into the grotto, and then you would turn into the drive-in, and then you would perambulate around the diorama. So there were I had in my mind these distinct places that the viewer could encounter and find things to think about there and respond to, and these were kind of distinct places. And fantastically, that's what I was able to do. And when I presented this proposal, GOMA said yes. And it was amazing because it's actually a really big deal to build that environment, a really big deal. And I don't actually know of another gallery in Australia who could do it. So it's once in a lifetime, I feel. So I'm going to talk about the work now, the field. The field is 3,000 of these sort of transgenic flowers. They are obviously artificial, but they're also a kind of mix between animals and reptiles. And did you notice that they have an organ-sized sort of bulb shape in the middle? So it's like it talks about agriculture, it talks about nature, about a living thing, a plant thing, but it's obviously artificial. And it also might even make a reference to cultivating of organs as well. And as you walk in, you encounter this creature, the pollinator. And this work, it embodies the four main things that I really wanted to bring to this world. And they are wonder. There's a lot of wonder in this world. And I think that's a good thing, because there's a lot of wonder in the natural world. But I don't feel that there's a lot of wonder in our everyday lives. So, and I find wonder inspiring. And so when the viewer comes to the gallery, I would love them to experience that, because that for me is a very uplifting and life-affirming feeling. And I want that in my life and in other people's lives. Then the second thing is that you immediately see a relationship. And the whole show is about relationships. Relationships between us and other animals. Relationships between us and our environment. Relationships between us and our bodies. And relationships between us and the artwork. Like the whole show is a series of relationships and how actually they're all interconnected. The third thing is fertility, like fecundity, the potential of life, is actually the theme of the whole show. For 30 years, I've been going on about the natural and the artificial, but this show kind of skews it towards this more sanguine and, for me, definitely optimistic sense of the potential of life fecundity. So a lot of the works are ripe with life. There's a lot of pregnancies, a lot of forms emerging. And ambiguity. Did I say ambiguity? Good, sorry. Ambiguity, what's going on? Yes, it's not completely obvious. It's not, nothing is obvious. Let's look at this work, the pollinator. What is that plant-like thing that's half human without a head? What is it? And it's got a pregnant bulbous form there. What's inside? Is it an egg? Is it a child? Don't know. Haven't seen it before. And that characterises a lot of the world. It's familiar, like it could possibly be conceivable, but you haven't seen it before. Like it's not alien. And we're looking at the creature. What's the creature? Is it a descendant of a meerkat or something? Not quite sure. A cat? Something? Not quite sure. But it's conceivable. What's he doing? Well, he's intervening in some way, and it's some kind of something to do with progress. And we get the progress from the legs, these marching, elegant legs. And we think, okay, well, there's also a lot of levels to the work. There's the spectacle to the work, and then there's the kind of, what's going on? Well, I think what's going on is that he's a kind of pollinator, and he's kind of involved in this process of reproduction. And interestingly, we think that the process of reproduction from our own species is kind of intimate and private, but actually in nature it's not. And even in our everyday lives, my process of reproduction was not private at all. It had a big technological intervention. This doesn't seem inconceivable to me, and that there's an intermediary facilitating this kind of reproductive process. And that stands against the idea that we are all distinct and separate from each other, for me. But here are this is the field that they inhabit. And then we come across then to the Kindred, who is the sister to the Big Mother. So the work crosses time, but she's part of this world. And Kindred's a special work for me. Well, they all are. But there's I love her. She's a mother. She's an orangutan mother, and I'm very interested in orangutans because they are the ultimate, in my eyes, nurturers. And I see myself as an orangutan mother. When I tell my children, you must eat vegetables, you must do it. I do it because I channel the orangutans, because that's what they do. They teach their children what to eat, when to eat it, when it's ripe, and where to eat it. And they do that for 6 years. For one child, they're quite solitary creatures. They keep their children close and nurture them in a most beautiful way. And then when that child is ready to leave and understands their environment, they go off and get pregnant and have another child, and then slowly that child drifts away and starts their own family. And I know I'm projecting. I know that. I know it's not that simple. But to me, it's not about how they are like us. It's like how I would like to be like them. And that's interesting. That's not. Often we anthropomorphize creatures and say, they're just like, they have human traits. They are very progressive or evolved or whatever, civilized, whatever you'd like to say. But actually, for me, it's like, I'd really like that orangutans gives me the confidence to be a good mother. or try and be the best mother I can be. And here she is, a mother herself, with one child that is even more human than she is. So she's a chimera of human and orangutan, and then her second child is completely human. And we look at them and we go, oh, that's like our evolution. You know, like the baby, you know, that's how we see ourselves at the apex of evolution. We're the most evolved. But in fact now, even through science, we know that we are not the most evolved. They have an amazing intelligence, and they are completely adapted to their environment, and they are super evolved. It's just that we have a different kind of relationship to the world. And yeah, they've sort of come out on the bottom of it. So it's not about that. It's not about their difference in evolution or difference with each other. It's actually about how connected they are. That's what the work is about. And to me, that's actually an incredibly positive thing to depict. And that's why I do it. I want to kind of valorize it. And there she is. She's got this beautiful, strong body. Like, pose is very important, body posture, and she's quite open, but we still feel her vulnerability. Like, she couldn't just run away with 2 children if she was attacked. Like, there would be a problem. Yeah, and even her genitalia is open there, which is, yeah, very, 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 I wouldn't do that. Like, it's very vulnerable. And then we walk through the field, and as we walk through the field, the flowers slightly respond to you, because we've been able to put a sprung floor down, which is amazing. Which is so beautiful. And the flowers slightly respond to you like they do in real life, in nature, as we're becoming to understand. And we meet the bond and teenage metamorphosis. This is the first time that we see chimeras that are not made up of 2 different species. And the most amazing thing about this work is that these creatures are made up of 2 different species and something that's not organic. So this boy has been conflated, brought together with an inanimate object, which is a sand shoe. So it's got this armadillo back, but it's actually the sole of a sand shoe. And, you know, I don't really think that this is where it's got places, this is where science and our future lies. I really don't. But it's a great way of talking about the direction that we're going in as a community, because this is a myth. This is a story. That's what I do. I've realised that what I do is I tell stories. Like, all these works have narratives that are quite discernible, I think, by the viewer. And this boy is, the idea that we can imagine a body that is so changeable, flexible, protean, that it can be brought together with a status object, a sports piece of equipment, is amazing. But it's also not amazing. It's of this time. This is the world we live in. And yeah, I want to mark this. I want to be a reflection of what's going on, and I want to discuss it with other people. And these are catalysts for conversation. These are places where we can be in this space where we can think and feel and focus on these things. by now, I hope the viewer has thought, oh, I can hear something. And the soundscape will have kicked in because it's so natural that at first, I don't think you hear it because it's very natural. It's of these cicadas. And it's like, but how can they be in here? Like in an art gallery. How can this natural form be in this artificial space? But of course, they're not natural. And that's that relationship between the natural and the artificial coming up. It's so beautifully expressed in the sound made by Frank Titaz. Because it shouldn't be there, but it's kind of soothing. And if you listen to it a little bit more, like everything in the work, it has layers, it's multivalent. You can hear the kind of rhythm in it. It's got a kind of song in it. Yeah, I guess in a way what this work is about is it's about what it means to be human in a time when we know through science that we are so linked to all the other living organisms on the planet. I mean, our cells divide in the same way that yeast does. Like, we're so connected. But it's a time when we are also able to change ourselves in the most dramatic way. And the idea of having a body that's part Sanchu or part something else, I don't know, part telephone, part machine gun, part jumping legs, I don't know, whatever it is really possible. And I want this work to kind of say, oh, this is the period that we as a community are living through, and this is the story that we're telling about it while we're trying to grapple with the kind of ethical implications of what it means to be living a life today. And so the next thing we did at GOMA is we built this fantastic ramp, and that's a big part of the show, and really hard to do. We don't want that ramp collapsing. So it's really solid, and you go from this sort of wobbly form to this quite solid ramp. And I was thinking about those meditative walks that people do in Tibet, where you walk through these mountains and you're quiet and you contemplate things and then you keep on going. This isn't a Tibetan mountain, but it's the GOMA mountain. And what happens here is we come up to this work, Heartwood, which is really a big step in my practice. Like I can do, like Big Mother, Kindred, that's classic me. But this is even intense for me. This is where this outburst, this outpouring of fecundity, this huge overload of growth, this commingling of things. Like the whole show's about commingling. Nothing stays in its place. Here we have a life form which is part machine, automotive form, part human, this beautiful male body, Saint Sebastian body, with this crazy, monstrous overgrowth of elbows, kind of like a succulent plant, and the heads. There's not one head but three, but they're not heads anymore. They become the fruit of this weird walking technological human tree, and all of this has been affirmed by nature, by this magnificent Australian wedge-tailed eagle. And nature, as we know, only lives on if it can adapt, and those eagles can adapt. And in fact, if you want to see birds of prey, just go into the city, the high-rise buildings. And here they are on this intense, amazing explosion of commingled life. It's, for me, I really set out to make an iconic work, not as in like famous, but as in kind of a kind of totem, like this is, I don't know, what you would have outside some kind of, I don't know, in the middle of a village or something, I don't know. And so there's that work, which I think is quite a little bit overwhelming. And then you can look over the balcony into the grotto. And this, I think, is so beautiful architecturally because of the height. And we see these other chimeras. And these chimeras are the mushroom bats. And here they are, they're porcelain. They're all handmade and dyed, dipped in the colour. And they're all there. And they are also kind of have this incredible abundance as well, just the scale of them. But also, I'm really interested in mushrooms because they also defy categorization. Like, we don't really know where to put them. In fact, we don't actually know much about them up until quite recently. And we've in the last year or two, we've realised that what the organism in the ground does, and the mushrooms are the fruiting bodies of this organism that lives in the ground. What these filaments do is they mine minerals from rocks, and they pass these minerals through the filaments, and they feed them into the roots of trees, and the trees feed them carbohydrates back in response. Like, it's just unbelievable what they do, and we have no sense that they're even there and what they do for our environment. So I look at them and think, wow, just so wondrous. They're a bit of an obsession of mine. They sort of seep into almost a lot of art forms. And here they've seeped into these bats. And I live in Clifton Hill, and every night the bats fly over our house. And bats are also incredible. They're the most numerous mammal on the planet. And they're kind of mysterious and frightening and creepy. They carry a virus, but they're also quite beautiful in their way. They move through the world, and when we push them out of the botanic gardens, they'll find somewhere else to go, and they navigate through the echolocation, or maybe just through other species, through smell and through landmarks. Not all bats are blind, so they're just miraculous creatures, and I just wanted to celebrate them. And as you walk into the grotto, you meet the eagle eggmen. The eagle eggmen are the kind of masculine aspect of this world of fecund with life, and they're sort of here husbanding these eggs. We're not quite sure what they are, but we know that they're so important that they've blended their bodies around these eggs just to nurture them. The way that leafy sea dragons do, not dragons, sea horses do. And I really love them. They've come from Charles Le Brun's engravings from the 17th century. I've always loved those. I wish I had a picture of them. I'll have to Google them. But Charles Le Brun did these incredibly popular illustrations of people's faces looking like different animals. And the idea was, if you looked like a pig, you were greedy. If you looked like an eagle, you had integrity. If you looked like a rabbit, you were timid. And that was the science of that time. Just like in our time, the science is, if you have this gene, you're predisposed to this disease. At that time, that's what it was. That's how they understood agency in the body. And I just kind of love that a lot because I also have their nose as well. So I kind of identify with them. And they've taken, so if you look at Charles Le Brun, that's where they come from, the Eagle Men. Yeah, and they're just doing their thing in their sort of slightly mysterious way. And their boots, well, boots are a really big deal for me. Shoes in general are. And these boots, I love the way that their bodies have become blended with these cowboy boots. There's lots of boots in the show, lots of helmets, lots of boots, lots of flowers, lots of sort of fruiting things. Yeah, the ornament from the boots becomes part of this sort of embellishment of the body. I love cowboy boots because they're boots for men, very masculine men, but they're incredibly ornate as well, and I find that very attractive. Yeah, I guess in a world where in this world where you see that, you know, everything is so commingled, it sort of sets up that question. You know, can we really continue to invest in the barriers that we put up between us and other creatures? That's one of the themes that I'm really interested in. Now, this work is not even in the catalogue. It's not even. I don't. Maybe can I tell the story of this? Oh, okay. I rocked up last Saturday with this under my arm, and I said to Peter, this is Peter McKay, the beautiful curator who's really worked with me. I said, Peter, I want this in the show, and I want it to be an Easter egg, and it's just for kids. Like, we won't tell anyone it's there, and we'll just drill holes in the wall, and so that if it's only for them. And to my great happiness, he said, okay. Like, it's a really big deal bringing a work in right at the last moment. And he said, okay, we'll do it. This is how fantastic GOMA has been with me. And I think it's a lovely thing to have something just for children, because children, it's not a show for children, but I think children get a lot out of it. I think often people really underestimate children, and I don't, because the ideas that I'm dealing with are the ones that they have to deal with every day. Like yesterday I met some girls from STEAM, these 60 girls who coming through the gallery, and I said, I talked about CRISPR. They all knew. They all knew about it. It's their life. This is the world they live in. And I was really happy about that, because I thought, yeah, makes sense. They're going to get it. And then, CRISPR's a gene editing technology. And it was evolved about 4 years ago by these in Silicon Valley. It's not quite Silicon Valley, around there, not quite, in university, big university. Which one was it, Todd? Berkeley, yeah. It's a really big thing. And in fact, it's a technology that will probably be involved in every birth in the next decade. Oh, okay, so this is a film, and it's a 2-minute film, and it's a birth. It kind of needed to have some something. I felt it was really missing, and the process of intercoming. And what happens in this film is that something emerges from this fleshy form that we're not quite sure what it is. And it emerges as a kind of seedling. And we look at it, and it's almost like it's in over time lapse, like it's jerky like that. It's as though it's kind of, we're capturing it. And what happens is that it opens up as a plant, and then it becomes this kind of, again, a flower, fruiting body, sexual organ, but then it's balloons up in this kind of plastic way, and we realise that it's not. We don't realise, but we're more cognizant that it's actually, yes, it's super artificial, and then it becomes more kind of human, and we see two legs, and then it does a kind of a bit of a yoga pose, and then and then it kind of flips up, and we go, oh, it's not human. No. In fact, I don't even understand what scale it is. It's kind of this small homunculus, and it takes its first steps. And like, I have births in my show because I see them as positive. Like any life is positive, and that's Tree Heart as well. It's celebrating life, but no life in particular. And I guess it sounds, at this point you're thinking, oh, this woman's just, like, she's just too optimistic, you know. No, I'm not. I'm actually not. I'm actually quite wary and anxious about how things are going, and I'm really worried about the environment. And this is why I'd make this work, because I want to have a kind of antidote to what's, or not an antidote. I want to make something that we can discuss in a way that we kind of feel open to do. Like, often when I listen and read texts about environmentalists, I'm absolutely frozen with fear and terrified for my children's future. I mean, I'm on my way out, but they have to live in this world. And I just don't know what to do. So I think that what I'm doing with my work is I'm bringing in these stories and making a space for people to kind of bring in their own stories and kind of animate this space in a way that's not so closed down and just histrionic. And because I actively feel that my work is trying to find a way to go forward through discussion about these issues. And a lot of them are issues to do with responsibility of care, like the ethics involved in all these decisions that we're making or not making. We're just sort of witnessing. A lot of my work is what's the space for difference in our life? What are we responsible for when we change nature? How do we treat the animals that are involved in science? All of these things are vitally important, and I think are in the work. So in the drive-in, and by this time the soundtrack has changed. Like in the grotto, it was like these Tibetan bells. It was almost a little bit like the sound is solid and heavy. It's kind of has a weight to it. It's kind of, and it's vibrations. You can feel them on you. And then you go into the drive-in and you see these guys. And what these guys are about is how technology is becoming so natural that we can imagine them as having a life cycle closer to an animal than a machine. Like, it's not hard for someone like me to think that a motorcycle is a lot like a tiger, and it could be possibly attacking this deer like Vespa deer, and they're in this duel, and we're not quite sure exactly where it's going to go, and in fact, this is actually a continuation of a visual trope that has existed in art history. Like, there are very, very many paintings that artists have depicted of this, our understanding of nature. Like, there's a predator and a kind of victim. And these paintings are, there's one fantastic one at the art gallery at the NGV by Stubbs. It's really beautiful. And you can really empathise with this creature that's being attacked and mauled, but maybe they might be able to get away with it. And it goes back to, I don't know, it's a really old visual art image trope. Oh, yeah, and then the soundscape changes again and all the other stuff fades away and you know that you're in this place. And we see a very, very familiar caravan, a beautiful caravan. A very Australian caravan. And we come around and we see who's in the caravan. And I really love this work too. Well, I love them all, but this was actually a new thing for me as well. I've never actually depicted... there's a lot of sex in my work. Like, it's actually quite sexual. But I've never actually depicted an amorous couple. I've always kind of stayed away from that because I just thought, oh, maybe it's just, I don't know. But anyway, and I have now. And happily, a lot of people love it, which it's nice for me. Because I sort of worry about these guys, because it's really, this is an Frankenstein story. This is where it comes from. That Mary Shelley, whose book was published 200 years ago, this year, she's pretty close to my heart, and her story is incredibly influential for me. And when I read it when I first met Peter, I realised that I really identified with the monster, and I meant to, because Frankenstein was a really bad parent. Like, he was. He did not look after his offspring, and his offspring found love with a blind person. Experienced it, and then he thought, maybe someone will love me, so I'm going to ask my creator for a mate. And Frankenstein says, yeah, well, I guess so, but then he reneges on it, and that's when the monster goes crazy and kills Frankenstein's family. Like, duh. Like, it's like, really? I mean, you know, and what these guys are, they're the anti-Frankenstein story. It's not quite so simple. But, you know, it's like you look at them and you think, oh, they're in this beautiful cocoon. I love cocoons. Place of transformation. There's always a cocoon in my work. And here they are, and they're kind of maybe on the run, or maybe they're definitely on the outside because they're maybe nomadic, or maybe they're on the outskirts of society. They live in a trailer park. And there they are, together. They have each other. And it's really a very beautiful and intimate moment. That's the sort of moment I aspire to. And, you know, and here they are. And the male is on her shoulder. And that's really important too. Like, when we look at these works, I mean, I don't even have to tell you about them. You just read them because you can read posture. You can read everything. You can read... You could look at my shoulders and go, oh, she's not feeling very confident. You know, whereas you can read all that. I don't even have to tell you, and that's what you do with this work. And you go, oh, she is the one who is looking out, and he can sleep because he needs to. And he can be vulnerable and strong and beautiful at the same time. And he is beautiful and strong. He's just like that guy in Star Wars. What's his name, Hector? Kai Chen, or whatever, what is it? No, I can't. Kylo Ren, oh, gorgeous. But so evil. But he's just like that. He was the inspiration, kind of. Anyway, I don't want to diminish the work. It's not. I'm not diminishing. It's not. Anyway, and so here they are together, and they are the chimeras. You know, that maybe they found each other, but what they really represent, along like the young family in the other galleries, that they represent reproduction. And what that ultimately means is, yes, we can control them, we can control the technology, but we really can't control their destiny. And their destiny could be that they reproduce. And that is, a really big deal when you change someone's DNA, your children's DNA. And then you hear the soundtrack, and Frank did a great job. And it's kind of very quite Australian. He had this wonderful Australian whistler, and Frank made this beautiful sort of eerie, kind of Picnic at Hanging Rock type thing. It's not Picnic at Hanging Rock, but it has that sort of nostalgia. Because this is a very nostalgic place. Dioramas don't exist anymore. We don't make them. In fact, it's a dying art. And Brian Scales is one of the people in Australia who can do that, make them, and he helped us make this one. And it's a place where we want to look at and understand what's happening in the natural world in an artificial way. So it's perfect for me. But we don't see extinct species here. We see these new guys. And I guess I'm asking, when we change nature, when we want to bring back the mammoth, when we watch the last white rhino drop dead, when we think about the northern hairy-nosed wombat, and we want to do something and intervene, and for good reasons sometimes, for very good reasons. What's going to happen? Like all these questions, who's going to look after them? Why are we doing it? Is this where we should be putting our resources? There are a lot of questions. And so these are the gazelle mitts. There's the helmets. There's the, do I have a picture? Yeah, the butthole penguins. There's a kind of bit of humour in my work, and that's okay, because a lot of this stuff is tough. Like, it really is tough, and people need that kind of entry into the work sometimes. Like, it is talking about how we relate to nature, and are we okay with the idea that we might create creatures, and in fact we actually already are creating chimeras. And what does that mean? This is just a kind of a myth, a story that makes space for us to connect with these ideas in a way that's not overwhelming. I was talking to Eben Kursky, who's going to speak tonight, this afternoon, and he said that his first jobs were in science labs working with animals, and I just and part of, where's Eben? Is he here? Oh, there he is. You should tell this story, but I'll tell it before you. But you said that part of what made you want to come into philosophy of science and talking about science was that the way the animals were treated and the way you had to dispose of all these animals, and it was just one facility. This is your story. I just couldn't even listen to him. I really couldn't even listen to him. I was going, no. So it is hard stuff. But at the same time, it's actually quite interesting stuff too. I mean, like this creature to me is incredibly optimistic. It's all about being joined with someone else in the most profound way. Like, it's intensely connected in a beautiful sexual way. And it has that, not duality, it has that spectrum. Our future has that spectrum, and I hope that my work kind of sort of engages with conversations around that. So you should watch this movie that GOMA has made about how the work is made. It's 18 minutes. It's really quite good. I haven't really talked about how the work is fabricated and made, but that will give you a great insight about how this work comes to life. Obviously, I make it with a lot of people. Like, I don't make it by myself. No one could do this. It's just there's so many aspects to it. And I don't really want to either. So my job is to come up with the ideas, sort of the overall big picture, we're going to do other world, we're going to have this journey, we're going to talk about these ideas, these are going to be the forms, these are the creatures, then we're going to have that blah. And then I work with a whole team of people, and some of them have been with me for a long time. The main one is my partner, Peter Hennessy, and he installed the whole show. Like, I didn't install it at all. I'm terrible at that. Like, there's too many decisions. Nothing would be placed if I did it. So it was really great to have Peter be decisive. And he's got an architectural background, so he understands space. I've got an emotional connection, and I don't like it. So Peter's a huge part of this work, and in some ways a kind of mentor as well, and the reason why I'm an artist. I wouldn't be here if I didn't have him at all. And then we have Daniel, who does all the visualizations with me. So he takes my drawings and makes them concrete in a 3D model. And he brings a lot to the work. And I'm fine with that because I'm fairly collaborative. The work isn't about my gesture. It isn't about my form. And if it was, I think that would kind of be a bit it wouldn't have much value, because I don't expect people to be interested in me. But I do know that the sorts of ideas that my work is talking about are really important, and we all want to talk about them, and that's what I want to talk about with people. And so Peter, Dennis and I have made this studio where we create all these sculptures, and they take a long time to make. Like Kindred was about 18 months, team of 8 people. It's a lot of work. That's why she looks so good. And all of them, Pollinator, around 18 months, probably more, because it's 2 figures. And they both have to balance. That work is all about balance. And so we have, sometimes we work with a modeller, a sculptor, but sometimes we go out to a 3D modelling factory, and we work with that, and then Fiona and Tox make the moulds, and then we get it back in, and we do the silicon layout. Isabel does that. Then Mutsumi deals with the seams, and then Isabel will do some more painting, and then Liz will do the hair work, and Peter will do all the coordinating and the kind of putting it together, which is a big thing. And it's a really big thing. And I'm there all the way along, sort of being part of the process, but I don't have those skills. I'd have to be 8 people to have those skills, so that's not possible. But it works really well because everybody really cares about the work. It's a really familial space, like we all care about each other and the work. And that's why the work looks so good, because we all put a lot of effort into it. And and it was great to have everyone up for the opening and just finally enjoy this great outcome, because we'd been working so hard for about 2.5 years to make this show. Have I run out of time?
Some questions?
Do you want questions? Yeah.
Anyone's got any questions?
Thanks. That's great.
I think these questions could have occupied us for many more hours. It's been a truly profound opening up of this work, and I think it all began when Patricia used the word relationship. I think what this has provoked at the moment of questioning is, what is your relationship with this work? How does it make you feel? And I think working with Patricia, as the gallery has over 2 or 3 years now, as we've developed this project, you can only take away one sense, and that is that she cares deeply. And I think that was very clear from this morning's talk, which I think we've been all very, very privileged to be part of. So would you join me in please very warmly thanking Patricia. Thank you. I think that's as close as a floor talk has ever had here to a standing ovation. That was wonderful. Thank you. Look, I do need just to mention the program, particularly today's. Today at 1:30, in conjunction with the World Science Festival, there's a conversation on science and art in the River Room, at the River Room stage, with Patricia, Cosmos Magazine Editor-in-Chief Elizabeth Finkel, and Deakin University's Eben Kursky. Then at 2:30, there's going to be a physical walk through the exhibition with highlights, with a discussion between Patricia and Peter Mackay, the curator of the exhibition. Both of them, if you can stay with us, not to be missed. I won't go through the detail of tomorrow's program. It is available around the gallery for you to see, but there is a talk as well at 11:30 tomorrow, and also another at 1:30, which is going to actually bring the design team, Peter and the design team, into the conversation. So I do hope you can join us for as many of those conversations as possible over the rest of the weekend, but do enjoy the exhibition and do come back to it. Thank you.